We're here. We're back. We did it. Today was a lot of fun. We talked a lot about AI and KPIs, which is always a good time. So Ibby, who did we have on? And kind of like give me the rundown. What are listeners in for?
Yeah. So we had Kenji Hayward. Kenji he leads support at Front, which with itself is a support organization. It's a support piece of software. It's competitor to the Zendesks of the world. A little bit different. They have I think they're chat first. They were they're a modern business, but he leads support there, which is a little bit meta when you think about it, right? Like leading support at a support-oriented organization. But the thing that has allowed him to do is it's given him a lot more, I would say, perspective when it comes to like what it means to build a good support team and what it means to build a good support product. We talked about a lot of stuff. Like I think like a good way of distributing the chapters is like, how do you use AI in support? That's kind of where we started. Then we moved on to, what is AI good at and what is AI not necessarily the best fit for? There's a lot of quotes in there that I particularly loved, including his, he talked about the fact that, companies like OpenAI are building historically like the same style of organization that we've seen. He talked a lot about back office use of AI, where, you and I talk a lot about Coursera, and we believe that back office is the right place for it, right? The highest leverage thing that your human agents can do is talk to your customers, right? If you're going to try to upsell them, if you're going to try to like present a great front, if you're going to try to retain them for as long as possible, the thing that your support agent shouldn't be doing is back office work, right? Like documentation, process flows. Like give AI that stuff because it's not high leverage for a person to do. And so we talked a lot about that. And then the last thing that I'd say is like support as a sort of like centralized knowledge base for the rest of the company, right? Like how does product lean into the insights that are driven by support? How does marketing? How does sales? We talked about quite a lot of this, and I don't know, Kenji just fits the ethos that I feel like I fit. I like as a company, we want to help people do this kind of stuff, and the conversation really, I just enjoyed it a ton. I think that there's a lot of learnings in there. I think his viewpoint is very, very good. It's very similar to, I put him and Michael Baer in the same camp, who we had a couple weeks ago. Thought that, yeah, exactly. I don't know. Anything I missed there?
No, I think that all tracks. I mean, one thing we'd started, like, they got loosely mentioned. I think he before we even started recording, we were just kind of hanging out. And one of you had talked about kind of how in a modern org, the customer support, customer experience team is almost like the CEO of the customer themselves. And that got me thinking, and it really is, especially for, PLG brands or D2C brands. Like, it's almost like your head of experience is your chief customer officer, right? And so like, that's something you hear about at like enterprise SaaS brands, usually sales led. They'll have a chief customer officer, and it's a huge deal. And their whole job is to drive customer centricity and to make the customer central to how you think about product and how you think about growth. And it's interesting that we don't really have a similar title in e-com brands or in D2C brands or in PLG brands. But you're right, like that's kind of what the CX leader is, or the CS leader is. And so when you take that kind of mindset to it, a lot of this conversation, like you said, it was about figuring out how to position your support team as a growth center instead of a cost center, which we talk about a lot. And that mindset might actually be the one that kind of clicked for me, where it's like, oh yeah, think about yourself as the chief customer officer instead of help and support. I don't know.
I think that's right. Like, I don't know, when you think about it, it just inherently makes so much sense, right? Like I don't know, we are a business. We talk to customers. Like the most important thing that I can do all day, every day is figure out how to provide value to customers and how to solve people's problems. And the only way that you can do that is by talking to them. And so if you're a large organization, it is impractical for the CEO to be the person that like deals with customers on a day-to-day basis. And so where does, like, I don't know, if I'm a marketer and I'm trying to understand, hey, like, what are the personas? You can do that information yourself, right? Like you can create a survey and you can launch a survey to your customers, or you can just go to the head of support and say, hey, like, do we have product reviews? Do we have NPS surveys? Do we have any of this information? And how do I use that to understand like the types of people that are finding value in our products? And those are the ways that you should, I think, design campaigns. Like if I'm gonna, the best users of Cotera are, redacted, because I don't think I can publicly say, but also built in Coterie and a couple of these other companies. And the thing that I need to do is I need to figure out that, like, when we try to do marketing, those are the ones where we come up with the case studies first. Those are the ones where we try to find companies that are similar to that, like high growth companies where they're trying to solve a lot of customer problems, and then that's the distribution. Sales, same thing. Like if I want to figure out upsell opportunities, like where do I go? I go to the place where people are having pain points with my product. If I'm a product organization and I want to figure out what to build, the thing that you should build is the thing that provides the highest leverage to your customers. The thing that is going to be the most innovative. So where do you go? You ask the head of support. There's just so many use cases for this, I think, and there's not enough companies that think like that.
Yeah.
Built does, I think.
Built does. And I think there's, I think part of it's like an old fashioned mindset. I wonder if part of it has the job evolved quite a bit. And I realize we're going on a tangent, so we should probably just let Kenji talk for himself. But some things, there are companies that are changing or doing things better is the bottom line.
Yeah. I agree.
Okay. Without further ado,
that was good.
Let's get Kenji in here.
Kenji Hayward.
I'm Ibby Syed.
I'm Shaw Collins.
And this is Numbers and Narratives.
Incredible. Kenji, so I guess before we jump in, for those that don't know you, do you want to just very quickly introduce yourself and what you do up front?
Yeah, so I'm the head of support at Front. I've been here for over 7 years. I've been building support teams for about 10 years, and I've basically worked every support job possible for the last 14. So anything from tier 1, taking phone calls, managing smaller teams. Largest team I ran was 200. Not that that's Front today. We're a much leaner, more impactful team. But yeah, support's my life. Like I've seriously found a way to integrate support into like every segment of my life. My social, I spend time on LinkedIn posting about support. All my friends, we talk about support. So my wife hates it, but this has become my obsession over time.
Wait, your wife? How does that? That's hilarious, actually. I feel like my fiance is very nice about the fact that I am an AI nerd, and she's like, yeah, you should do that. But I feel like if I talked about it a ton, she would.
Well, you get the benefit of she's been at med school, so once she's stuck around you all the time, she may have a lower tolerance.
That's fair. That's incredible. You guys are at Front. Y'all are leaning pretty heavily into the AI side, and I think one place to get kicked off is, do you want to explain your guys' like Axis framework really quick?
Yeah, and like real quick clarification, like the Axis framework is mine, and I'm trying to get Front, if you're listening, Front, to build it natively, which is we're getting really close to. But this is actually the capstone project of an AI course I took at Berkeley. And it was just, you had to find a way to integrate AI into your work life. Support is my work life. And so the project was, I was finding that when I reviewed chatbot interactions, we had a super high deflection rate. It was 58% even in November of last year. But then when I kind of just QA'd it myself, I was like, wow, these are terrible. Like these are really bad experiences. If this was a human, I would have fired them by now. Like if this many people walked away from the chat, like that's a problem. But I think as support leaders, we get so caught up in like the deflection rate that, oh, it's great. Like they're not reaching my team. That's all good. I'm saving money. But you actually like lose out on that whole customer experience. And so that was the driver behind creating it. And yeah, and it's great that I work at Front because I can talk to our head of AI and I can talk to our analytics team, and they've been really helpful in kind of taking my initial idea and then building it out into, what it is today.
I think it's a great point about deflection doesn't necessarily equal success, which I think, that's kind of the old go-to thought process, right? If someone can self-serve and get an answer, then that's better than having to have someone talk to them. But that assumes that every deflection is a successful deflection and has a successful resolution with a positive outcome. Um, and so it's almost like by choosing deflection rate as your primary KPI, there's so many second order effects that you have no idea what impact that is. And if you hadn't gone and done that assessment, you wouldn't have known the scale of that. And so I wondered, did you try putting, like, as you take this to Front, did you try like putting like a dollar amount to it of like, hey, these are so bad, this is probably going to lead to, this many detractors instead of advocates, and that costs us this, or anything like that?
Yeah, and we did a recent report, which is like customers have a threshold of it's 3 strikes rule. So 3 bad interactions, and they're typically you've lost trust with the brand. So it's hard to put a dollar amount. This is like kind of why I wanted to talk about the AI subject. I feel like one of the hardest things is to tie the dollar value to the support if it's not directly tied to revenue. But yeah, we clearly understand if you have a bad interaction, you walk away. Like if you're putting AI first, that's still the face of the company. Like it doesn't matter if it's your support team or if it's the AI bot or whatever you're running. Like that's the first perception your customer has. Yeah, so it's interesting because I think if you make deflection rate your goal, you're actually incentivized to create a worse customer experience because you want less and less people to reach you, right?
Yeah.
I think that's where we kind of get stuck.
And so how does what's a in your mind, because you have this kind of like meta role, right? Like Front as by itself is a way for companies to connect with their customers, and you're running support there, right? Like it's kind of like this like very like you can understand your learnings and like feed them back into product, and that product is not only better for Front as a company, but it's better for Front's customers. Where do you feel like companies right now, where do you feel like the mindset is going on? Because Sean and I both have opinions on this, but I'm curious to hear yours. Like you've said one bit of it, which is the deflection rate piece, right? Part of that, I think, is that there are a lot of teams that are incredibly narrow-minded and they view support only as a cost center. So it's like, oh, like if people are contacting us less, then yes, we are better. But they don't understand the second order effects that come from that. So do you want to like dive into that for a sec?
I think it's a mindset of you have to see support as a value driver. And so you want people interacting with your team. Like this is where we could get into like the other crazy metrics of, like ARR touched and just like how, running experiments on what happens if a customer interacts with support and then they don't. Like there different behaviors? Do they upsell more and those kind of things? So I think it starts with that. Like Front, we're a very forward thinking company. We're a support company. It is very meta because I do support at a support company using our own support tool. So we have to dog food our own stuff. But the cool thing is I'm also the voice of the customer because I am a customer. So like if I don't like something, or if like I said, we don't have access today, I want it in there. So I'm going to push really hard on the product team to make it happen. Cause I think I think that would be really beneficial for everybody. But I think it just starts with that. Like you either fall in the cost center camp or the value driver camp. And that kind of dictates a lot of the ways that you look at metrics for support teams.
And so if someone's at a company, like let's say they're at a company where the mindset around support is cost center, right? Is there like if you're already at that company, are there things you can do to change that perception? Or is it sort of like, hey, abandon all hope, ye who enter here, this is a cost center company, and then it's like find the next role and hope that you interviewed well, and by being an outsider you can come in.
You can change so there's one thing you can't change. Like you can't change where support is on the accounting books. So if it's in COGS, like if it's considered an actual cost, which it probably is in most cases, then that's not something that's not a hill you should die on. Like you should accept that. But there still are other ways that you can position support as the value driver. And that's where your metrics change. So if you're in that camp, you do focus on things like how are you driving value for the company? How are you touching the rev? Like an interesting one that I heard recently was ARR touched. And then what happens between the difference in that. So if a customer interacts with your support team, like what percent of that total ARR is that? And then what are the behaviors that are different from that? So if I was in the cost center camp, which I was in like 10 years ago, it's just telling better stories. You focus on different metrics that are about ROI, trying to find like the best thing you can find is some kind of dollar amount. So if it's like you created a revenue stream with premium support, your team is helping with upsells, like you have to find those really clear lines to connect the dots. When you're on the value side, you can be a little more creative. You can talk about less customer effort, you can talk about your CSAT score more. But I think if you're on this side of the house with the cost center, you really have to focus on the dollars. And that's okay. Like, it's not a bad thing. It's just a different approach that you have to take. And you have to be a lot better at that as a support leader.
Do you see any value? You mentioned kind of the advocating for the customer experience as a whole. Like, is voice of customer a either key tentpole in saying we are a value center, or is it a stepping stone to in that conversation of like, hey, even if you can't tie it to a metric now, is that like the first step in the argument? Is like, look, these people are all saying amazing things. I've been able to feed this to product, and so it did this. Or kind of, how do you see VOC fitting in there?
Yeah, and it's debatable where VOC lives, and there's different definitions, but that's what I think about the value coming from is we talked about this earlier, like while we were just kind of chatting, but we sit on a gold mine of data. Like, customer data has never been more valuable for product teams, for engineering teams, like for everybody. Like, everybody can learn from the interactions we have with customers. And I think not enough support teams know that and know how powerful that is. And so like what I do is it's not a voice of the customer role, just in our own support ops team. We treat it like voice of the customer. So we create, real-time reports that we'll send to the product team with customer feedback and those kind of things. And then I can tie in, oh, we did drive these features. Like, for example, in front, our support team, we were the ones that suggested and implemented AI tagging for front. So that was something that did not exist before. And then I can go back and say, how many customers, upgraded because of this feature. And so that's something that's directly tied to revenue, but it's tied to your product influence.
That's really cool. I'd never kind of connected that as being a way you could do it, of saying like, hey, listen, like, our team on VOC identified this as an opportunity or a problem, fed it to product. This change drove this much revenue. Therefore, are us identifying that problem, even if you contributed, you say we get half credit for it or whatever, right? Like, we drove that much value. That's huge. Yeah, that's very cool.
So it's just about, it's all about connecting the lines. It's just a little fuzzier in different areas, but it's there. And I think that, like, I go to a lot of supporter conferences. Like, I was just at one in Austin last month, and it's always the hot topic. Like, there's not a conference where there isn't like 2 or 3 talks about how do we do this? Like, how do we speak finance? How do we like show that we're driving value? Like, this has been a never ending thing. I was on the Shep Hyken show 2 days ago, and he's been in the game for 40 years. He's like, dude, the cost center thing's been around since the dawn of time, than this thing that no one's ever figured out. So I think it's less about trying to figure out how to get rid of cost center, but how to like thrive in whichever bucket that you're in. And so, yeah, you can't choose what that is. Like, you can probably choose which company you work at, but sometimes you just don't know until you start. Because I've worked in that. Again, I've worked in that environment, especially early on in my career. It's just a different skill set, but I like what I do now. It's a lot funner.
You mentioned something interesting there, where it's very difficult to like speak the language of other teams. And I kind of actually want to, I talked to the beginning of this where it was like, oh, we can go down 2 paths. We can go down the AI path, or we can go down like the revenue path. What are some, you can actually, I think, like, okay, good example of this is one of the things that we're working on. It's like, we're a generalized AI agent system on top of text data. Like, we show on our website that we do VOC, but there's a lot of customers that use our AI agents for other things. And one of the really hot topics of conversation right now is success leaders are really upset. Well, one of the pain points in the success world is CSMs, i.e. the people that talk to customers every single day, are not salespeople. And so how you use AI to basically like give them a little bit of a nudge, saying, hey, I can, if I'm front, for example, you guys have both a customer service use case and like an email management use case. And so if somebody, like, while chatting with customer support who buys the customer service stuff, drops a line saying, hey, like, I actually, like, I'm having trouble with email management. I don't know what the specific words that they would say, but having an AI bot that basically like creates an opportunity in Salesforce and says, hey, like here's an upsell opportunity. There's also so many other use cases like that across like marketing, across legal, across product, across sales. Any sort of anything kind of come to mind there?
Yeah, I'm looking into this myself actually in the last week. It was like, which is using AI for customer intent, because I think like I don't know enough about the CSM side of the house to speak to it, but for support teams, like there's this whole push in this macroeconomic environment where we have to do more with less, and again demonstrate more value. So something with my team is we have to think about upsells, which is not something that we had to do before. But also, my team is not trained to spot those things. So we're looking into how front can use AI to surface those potential upsells, not in like the level that you're talking about, where like kind of pulling in the Salesforce data, but just kind of like nudging the agent, going like, hey, this customer doesn't have this feature. Looks like they're asking about it. It's on this plan. Internal note. Go ahead and ask. So that's something I'm trying to leverage AI for myself.
I think one of the things, Sean, we have the Obvi CEO on later today, and one of the things he posted on LinkedIn that I thought was pretty interesting is creating like customized ad campaigns based on like you can like understand personas based off of like what people say in support, right? If I'm HelloFresh, I can dive into people's individual things that they say in either a review or in a support call and understand, hey, is this person buying HelloFresh because they're a busy mom? Is it because they're trying to eat more healthy? Like, what is the reason for existence? And there's like marketing stuff in there too. There's so many different use cases to actually drive revenue, and having AIs that are built to be like almost little armies is an interesting sort of like future paradigm for us. I guess following up, one thing that I'm really curious about is, where do you see support teams going wrong with where they're implementing it? Like what should be given, like one topic of discussion, and this happens at some of the support conferences I go to too, is like, what is AI like a good fit for, and what is it like not a good fit for, right? Because like so many people, again, call center mentality, right? Like, I should have the fewest number of support agents possible. No, like they're actually like, if you reshift the thinking, there's a different way of thinking about the same problem, and sort of just like reutilizing like your human agents to be a lot more powerful. But like, where do you kind of fall on that line?
I fall somewhere in the middle. Like I'm definitely not in the. It's kind of like the deflection thing. Like I just don't believe in using AI as a barrier. I think of it as enhancing it. So but also I actually get more excited about the boring stuff that AI can do. So AI tagging, for example, like no support person likes categorizing conversations, but that data is very valuable because that's what we're going to feed to the product team. Like that's how we're going to pull trends. And so like, what are those little boring things that you can take off of their plate so that they can spend more time on having like a really good interaction when you actually do reach a human? So yeah, that's kind of where I fall on. Like if I was giving advice, I would first look at what are those things that you can just take off your team's plate, categorizing whatever things you do over and over again. Then look at enhancing your team. So suggested replies, helping with drafts, but also like, of course, you have to have some kind of chatbot in place for deflection. But I would make sure, this is why I'm glad we're going to talk about access, which is you want to be careful about that, and you want to approach it not as a deflection mechanism, but like literally, how can you make the experience better? Like how can you connect them to a human when they need to get connected to quicker? How can you actually give them answers when they need it immediately? So that's how I would approach it.
Yeah. So how does access work in production? I guess like if a customer was like implementing access, what is the ideal sort of user experience for someone interacting with it, right? Like it's pretty, like one of the ways that you could do it is obviously just in post, where it's like, hey, this was a bad interaction, but how could you do it live?
Yeah, that's probably like the next iteration. But right now it's a post thing. So I think you put it really well, which is it's the boss agent. I'm stealing that line from you. So it's crazy though, because we have so much trust in AI that we just let it go unmonitored. And so you think about your team, we're doing QA for all of my support team, and we have a very high, like our IQS score is 99% plus, like that's the bar. And so we should hold the same bar to AI because that's what, the customer is talking to. It's still an interaction. So I use it post, but I also make sure that it's like a flywheel where it's feeding every time we get some kind of feedback from it, like we need to improve this, or we need to connect to a human faster here. We did that. And so we actually redid our whole chatbot flow redesign, and we reduced the steps to reach a human by, I think, 60%, just because we saw so many friction points in the process of like people just getting super pissed off, like here and here and here. But I think people are afraid to look. Like I would challenge folks to go to your chatbot inbox, go like just pick 10 randomly. I guarantee you're not going to be super happy with what you see, and like maybe you just don't want to see that.
Maybe you just don't want to see that. I think you've hit the crux of the issue. I think you've hit the crux of the issue.
Yeah,
They
people just
definitely
don't.
don't. They definitely don't.
They know, but they don't want to know. They don't want to dig in and have to explain to your leadership team, like, oh, actually, this is terrible. Like, this is really bad because you're getting patted on the back that you're saving the company, a ton of money. And so, I was in that same boat. Like, I was doing before I did Access. Like, I was fine with. I was bragging about it. It was an OKR. It was on like the board deck. I was bragging about how good our chatbot deflection was. And then I had to do self-reflection. And then when I did this, I'm like, oh my God, 9 out of 10 are really bad, like really bad. And I was very transparent in the newsletter I wrote. Like I kind of struggled with, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to let people know like how it was at face value. And then because you can only get better from there. And so it's fine that we have a bad experience, or we did have one, a month or two ago, because the worst thing is just to let it fester, and it's only going to get worse. And so now I know the baseline is here, and we're getting it up there, and we'll continue to get it better and better.
No, that's exactly right. Yeah. How are you trying? I guess like, I don't know if I don't know how much you can share, but how are you guys planning on building it into the product at front?
Yeah, so the cool thing is today it's open source for at least for front users. So I can share a link later, but like anyone can actually use it. So if they use front, you can use Access, and it's fully automated. It'll go into your reports, and so you can pull like all the scores and everything. But I'm just trying to get that just native in front. And so right now we're doing a lot of workarounds. And so shout out to Jason on my ops team, but he's just the wizard who's taken like this really basic framework that I was using ChatGPT and Claude for like general LLMs for, which actually works really good still, like for, if you're strapped and you don't have a help center and you're just kind of starting out, you can get by with just dumping in exports, dumping in screenshots, and using the prompt that I provide for Access. Like it actually gives really accurate results. But now we can do it at scale. So every conversation that comes in gets scored and QA'd. So we don't have these issues like other companies are having, like Cursor recently, where you just, you probably could have caught that if you're monitoring it.
Wait, I don't know the
Oh.
cursor gossip. What's going on there?
Oh, that's a hot one. Ibby, do you know that? Do you know about that?
I saw it yesterday. Do you wanna explain it?
Yeah. So basically, you guys know Cursor. I mean, look who I'm talking to.
We use Cursor. Cursor
Yeah.
writes a lot of my code. Like it used to be an engineer, and now basically I like tell
Yeah.
Cursor what to do because my engineering team doesn't trust me to write good code.
Yeah, between Devin and Cursor, it's like writing everyone's code. But so Cursor, which is like one of the most advanced, fastest growing to 100 million ARR, most technologically advanced AI companies out there. What they were doing for support was they're using an AI agent called Sam, but not telling customers. And so customers would write in via email, and the first response they would get would be from Sam, but you would just assume that Sam's a human because there's not saying, hey, I'm Sam, the AI bot. So that's like one thing that's bad, like no transparency. What made it blow up and go viral, at least on like the YC boards, was it also hallucinated a policy that didn't exist. And so then when somebody posted about that, and they're like, wait, I just talked to Sam too. And then everyone put 2 and 2 together, and we're like, okay, Sam is not real. Sam is AI. Cursor is lying to us. And also it's making up these policies about my plan. So that kind of just spiraled out of control and has created this whole debate about, do you need to make your AI be transparent about when you're using AI? And I absolutely think you should. Like that should be a given for everybody.
It's also one of those things where it's really, really interesting. One of the first things that when I was at Peloton, that was where I was before this, we had this like policy of like members first. And so the way that we set it up was we basically were were like, hey, like if somebody complained about if they like got a refund, that changed at some point. But my sort of thought is that there's like a couple ways, right? Like you can try to like train the bot really, really well to understand each individual policy. Or what you can do is you can just have better edge case handling where if the bot doesn't know, like it's actually, I mean, you've done a lot of prompt engineering. Like this is just something where it takes a lot of prompting to be able to get the AI to admit that it's like not a good fit for it, but you can get it to go there. Or what you could do is you could just have it like, if you understand that it's going to hallucinate from time to time, just err on the side of cautiousness, right? Like if the customer is asking for something, just like be customer first. Like Cursor makes a ton of money. The 90% of their cases, I assume, are people that accidentally signed up for the trial and like want a refund. It's like, fine, just give them the dang refund. They didn't use the product. Like if they had used the product and gotten value from it, they're going to convert. If they didn't, they're just gonna be mad and then cancel it immediately, even though you charge them. Like we deal with so many customers that are in this space where they're PLG SaaS products, and it's like, look, like if people got the value, they wouldn't be asking for a refund.
They can also just call their bank and like dispute the charge. And there's like so many. You're just like creating a headache when there doesn't need to be one for you, for your team, for your accountants, or for your customer. Just take the easy road, do the right thing, just be a good person. Pretend you're a local bakery on the corner and someone came in and complained. Just be like, yeah, totally, whatever. Here's something for free. Go away.
Yeah, but it's funny. Again, like I think the whole I think the hallucination would not have gone viral if they were just transparent about that that it was AI. Like,
100%.
yeah, and so like that would
I
be
don't know about that. I mean,
yeah,
like,
I mean, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. Like, it didn't help. That's for sure. At least I think
yeah, that I agree that it probably didn't help.
You're a Cursor user. I think the hallucination probably pissed you off more. But I think for folks in the support community, it triggered us because we're like, who would do that? Like, how would you ever not say it's AI? But actually, like, we don't have these written rules, so you can do whatever you want. So it's just interesting how people approach it.
I
Well,
also
that
think
one's interesting too,
that
'cause
go for it.
all right, a one. I was gonna go back to to I remember the first time I signed up with HubSpot back in like 2017 or something like that, 2018. They had a chat bot feature, right? It was pretty limited in what it could do, but like you uploaded a picture of somebody else or you picked again, its default picture was not like one of you. It had like a stock photo and a name and all these things. And so I guess like in my head for the last 8 years, every time I just assume I'm not talking to a person when I chat, and I'm like always shocked when I find out it is a person. Uh, but it is interesting to say, like, yeah, like, what is the responsibility of being proactive with that and saying, like, hey, just to be clear, I am AI. If at any point you need to chat with a person, just like let me know and I can escalate that, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's the most important thing. And like, I also think you're right. Like the chat experience is different. This was email, so if you're emailing them, it emailed you back.
That's true. That is
So
very
like,
different.
I would absolutely expect a human to be emailing me back, and the
Yeah.
chat is debatable, but like I think that also just like a lot of things went wrong in those
Is
interactions.
that's interesting, isn't it? That is really interesting because I agree with you. I think if I was an email, I would have assumed that it was a person. The thing that I find curious there is I think that people are more upset about. I think you're right in the sense of I think that people were a lot more upset about the lie than they were about the fact that they were talking to AI, right? Like I think that like they would have been mad. I think they would have been mad like if the policies would have been incorrect and they like but they would have just gotten mad at the AI. I think that the brand damage for Cursor was a lot higher because of the lying, right? It's like it just feels like inherent mistrust somehow.
It also feels like it's worse for them to have some sort of hallucination issue because they're an AI company,
Exactly.
right? Like,
Yeah.
so like we talked about this last week. I won't say the name of the company. We had this whole thing last week where we tried to have a conversation where I tore down this company but didn't say the name of it, and like we couldn't get through this conversation without saying the name. But the company from last week, I had a terrible interaction. Their chatbot did not work. Like I signed up through a landing page, promised an offer. The chatbot said that wasn't an offer. I sent them the link. It goes, oh, that's interesting. That's not an offer we support. And it's like, what are you talking about? But that wasn't an AI company. And so my tolerance level for it was a little different. Whereas if I'm using a company to have them write production level code for me. And your AI is, even if it's not your AI, even if it's you're using some third party tool or whatever, or you're using Zapier, like I don't care. I'm now questioning the quality of your AI. And that feels like the biggest fundamental issue with this.
Yeah, I think you're right. That the expectations are higher, and I wrote a post recently about, because I know this for a fact. Like for example, OpenAI and Anthropic, they have pretty massive support teams. So human support teams, which again is like you would think, oh wait, no, there's no way like OpenAI would be just 99% automating this, but they're not. Like you still, it's a great thing for me. It keeps me in the job to know that the most advanced AI companies in the world still know that they have to invest in human support teams. So it's like, it is a weird paradox, but I like that we're still in this space and we're not completely on the other side yet.
It is funny. On that one, I got a recruiter reached out this week with like a job offer and whatever. And it's another AI company. Everything's fine. I did not even respond.
What, you get job offers? Our amazing,
but-
the amazing people that work at our companies get job offers. Yeah, no, I was kidding.
But it was an AI company, and like one of the bullet points they gave me for like why I should take this job was the amount of human headcount growth at the company as an indicator of their success, right? Which like, was a very traditional startup metric of like, hey, in the last year we've increased headcount from 10 to 50, and we're going to keep growing. But in my head, that like an AI company wouldn't be talking about that unless you're talking specific engineers. Like, hey, we're bringing on so much that'll progress our work so much. I was shocked that this company was like leading with headcount growth, and I guess you're right. Like, it is a good reminder that the teams that are closest to AI actually recognize the demand for human. Meanwhile, all the companies on the periphery who are using AI are like, does this mean I can get rid of everybody? I don't know. It's interesting.
It is interesting. Yeah. So I like to follow that. I like to follow and see how AI companies are building their support teams. It's really interesting to me because that to me is like a peek into the future. So I'm seeing like, what are they doing? How are they building out? It's actually very traditional. Like the way that OpenAI has built their support team is just like the blueprint I would use for any other company. And I think it's pretty much the same for everybody else. So this is why I think it's a really cool time to be in support because we have the opportunity to try new things. Like that's why I made Axis was, who knows? Like there's no new metrics exist, but all these new technologies are coming out and we're measuring it with the same old stuff that we've been doing for 20 years. And I was just looking around like, am I crazy? Like, why is nobody else doing this? So I just made it like that. That was kind of like the driver. So I think that we have a lot of opportunity to shape what this looks like.
Are there other metrics that come to mind that feel inherently outdated or like they were created because of limitations that happened either in the technology or whatever, that now like it's time for us to do some serious introspection and be like, this can be replaced?
Oh, for sure. Like one, response time, especially for AI, like it's so fast. Like what's the nanosecond faster? Like I think that those are going to go away at some point. CSAT, I think everything's going to become like AI. So it'll be inferred CSAT probably in like the next 6 months. We're working on that too. Be inferred QA. And so all these things like you would manually have to calculate and do, they're just going to get like a fresh coat of paint of how you would do it in this new AI era. But there's a lot, dude. There's so many that are outdated. I also think it's outdated to hang your hat on one. So like what I did with Axis, which I would think we would do with a lot more metrics, is blending them together. And so not just being this whole, I need to use whatever cost per contact, ARR, like one thing. Like I think you're going to see more metrics just kind of becoming meshed together to create like specific ones. Like that was my methodology, but I'm working on a new one. I don't know if it's going to work out yet, but that ties to revenue value, taking in like a lot of different points. But I'm just like scratching the surface on it.
That's fun. It's interesting to think about like what, experimenting in this world where you can build like a little MVP and like play around. Like, could you build some sort of like, okay, we start with an LTV model, we figure out the kind of impact of a good interaction and a bad interaction, and then like in real time while someone's chatting, you can like see like the LTV impact score going up or down, and someone's like just like gamify like, oh no,
I think we're going to see more of that. It's crazy how easy it is though, because I'm not, I took one course. I'm not a very like, I'm not super versed in prompting. Like, I think I'm okay at this point, but like anybody can go. This is how I want. Like, I just want to dig into this. I want to experiment a little bit, and you could literally hop into anything, ChatGPT, whatever, and just experiment, and you'll probably come up with something, pretty decent to get started. So I would love to see more people doing that and just sharing more new metrics in the community. Because I really think, like, when I first posted it, I tied it to a Kesha reference because apparently, like, this metric is the first one since TikTok came out, like the song. So it's been 15 years between this and customer effort. But I'm shocked though, because it's like, what are we doing? Like, why are we still doing all this stuff that was built for call centers, and we're not even doing support in that way? Like, it's a completely different game at this point.
Yeah, I think it's a good place to end. Kenji, thank you so much for coming on. I've been a longtime fan of yours on LinkedIn. We routinely share a lot of your posts internally at Cotera. There's like a I'll show you at some other point, but there's like a whole channel with different posts. Some of them, like our AI also routinely flags your posts as things that we should like. Actually, before I jump off, one of the ways that I 100% agree with you is that I think that too many people are thinking about AI in like a replacement for human way. Whereas like, I think if you think a little bit differently, like we don't have AI respond to LinkedIn posts that are interesting, which a lot of other companies do. What we do is we have AI read the posts, and if they're relevant to us or it thinks that we would have a good place to like bring up, it'll like flag it to us in Slack. And so between the AI and between just like people on the team reading your posts, they get like flagged a ton. I think you're the highest scoring person on all of the sort of that we track like thousands of people that talk about CX, and yours are the other most like sort of flagged by our AI as things that are like, this is like a really, really good post. Like we should definitely interact with this.
I like that kind of AI. That's so cool.
It's better than, I don't know. I hate being
That's
spammy.
amazing. Yeah, no, that's amazing to hear. I'm just glad it's helpful. Like, again, like, I just started posting the last 6 months. I just post what I know, and all I know is support. Like I told you, it's my life at this point. But I'm looking forward to staying connected, and I enjoy the stuff you guys post. And yeah, man, thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Anything that you want to pub before we, anything you want to pub before we jump off?
Yeah, just follow me on LinkedIn for new content. I'm also going to be releasing in the next couple of weeks just like a free custom GPT version of Axis. So if you don't want to do the prompt, you don't want to like go do the fancy open source stuff, it'll just be a GPT you can drop in your screenshots. So I'll release that in the next week or two.
Incredible.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for coming on, and yeah, we'll chat soon again.
Awesome. Thanks.